Imagine stepping into Europe 50,000 years ago. You spot smoke rising beyond a line of trees. Someone has built a fire. Someone is cooking food, making tools, and probably telling stories. But when you finally reach the camp, the people sitting around that fire aren't Homo sapiens. They're Neanderthals. And somewhere farther east, other human relatives are living their own lives. Denisovans are moving through parts of Asia. A small-bodied human species survives on an Indonesian island. There may even be other groups we haven't discovered yet. This wasn't a world controlled by one kind of human. It was a world shared by several. Then, something changed. One by one, those other human lineages vanished. Today, there's only one human species left, us. So what happened? Did Homo sapiens simply survive while the others failed? Or did our ancestors help remove every other kind of human from the planet? The answer isn't simple, and honestly, it may be more unsettling than the usual story. Let's start with the Neanderthals. For a long time, popular culture treated them like slow, clumsy cavemen, strong enough to hunt, perhaps, but not smart enough to compete with modern humans. That image is badly outdated. Neanderthals survived across Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. That alone should tell us something. You don't survive brutal winters, dangerous animals, serious injuries, and unstable climates by being stupid. They made carefully designed stone tools. They controlled fire. They hunted powerful animals at close range. They cared for injured group members who couldn't have survived without help. Some Neanderthals lived for years after suffering major injuries. That means somebody fed them. Somebody protected them. Somebody decided their lives were worth the effort. There's also evidence that Neanderthals buried at least some of their dead. They may have worn decorative objects and used pigments. Whether they created symbolic art remains debated, but they clearly weren't mindless creatures. They were intelligent, adaptable, and deeply social. And then Homo sapiens entered their world. Modern humans began spreading into Neanderthal territory in larger numbers. Within a relatively short period, at least by evolutionary standards, the Neanderthals disappeared. That timing looks suspicious. Humans arrive, Neanderthals decline. Eventually, they're gone. It's tempting to imagine a prehistoric war. Two human species meet. They fight over caves, hunting grounds, and water. Homo sapiens have better weapons, better planning, or larger groups. We win. They vanish. It would make a dramatic movie, but the physical evidence for a continent-wide campaign of extermination just isn't there. Some Neanderthal bones show serious injuries. A few may have resulted from conflict. The problem is that bones don't explain who caused the damage. Was it another Neanderthal? A modern human? A hunting accident? Or damage that happened after death? After tens of thousands of years, those questions become incredibly difficult to answer. This doesn't prove that our ancestors were peaceful. Small groups probably fought. People have competed over territory and resources throughout recorded history, so it would be surprising if ancient humans never did. But occasional violence isn't the same as organized genocide. And then there's the DNA. If you have ancestry outside sub-Saharan Africa, part of your genetic material probably came from Neanderthals. Think about what that means. Modern humans and Neanderthals didn't only see one another from a distance, they met. They spent time close to each other, and on multiple occasions they had children together. Those children survived. They entered communities, grew up, and had children of their own. Thousands of generations later, pieces of that inheritance are still carried by people alive today. So this wasn't simply a story of two sides fighting until one disappeared. The relationship must have changed from place to place. Some encounters may have been violent. Others may have involved cooperation, exchange, or temporary coexistence. And some became deeply personal. Unfortunately, DNA can only tell us that reproduction happened. It can't tell us how. It can't tell us whether two individuals chose each other, whether their communities accepted them, or what life was like for a child with both Neanderthal and Homo sapiens ancestry. The genetic record gives us the result. The human story behind it is gone. But if Neanderthals weren't destroyed in one enormous war, why did they disappear? One possibility is disease. When two populations remain separated for a long time, they adapt to different pathogens. Once contact begins, an ordinary infection for one group can become devastating for the other. Homo sapiens migrating out of Africa may have carried diseases that Neanderthal immune systems had rarely, if ever, encountered. No invasion would have been necessary. One friendly meeting could have introduced an infection. That infection could then move through a small Neanderthal community, killing older members, children, and experienced hunters. And disease usually leaves little evidence on ancient bones. A spear wound may survive in the skeleton. A deadly respiratory infection probably won't. Climate was another problem. Neanderthals lived through periods of major environmental instability. Temperatures changed, forests shifted, familiar prey moved or disappeared. Habitats could shrink surprisingly quickly. Their populations were already small and scattered. That's dangerous. A large population can survive several bad years. A tiny community may never recover from the loss of only a few adults. Add disease, food shortages, and competition from newcomers, and the situation becomes even worse. Then we get to the biggest factor: everyday competition. Homo sapiens and Neanderthals needed many of the same things: food, shelter, water, fuel, safe places to raise children. Our ancestors didn't have to hunt Neanderthals directly. They only had to gather resources a little more efficiently. Modern humans appear to have built wider social networks. Materials found far from where they originated suggest that different groups exchanged objects, information, and possibly assistance over long distances. That can be a huge survival advantage. If animals leave one area, another group may know where they've gone. If food becomes scarce, distant allies may help. New tool-making ideas can spread across communities instead of remaining trapped in one small band. Modern humans also developed weapons that allowed hunters to strike from farther away. That meant less risk and possibly more food. Now imagine that difference continuing for centuries. A slightly more efficient population grows. A slightly less efficient one shrinks. The shrinking group becomes isolated. Genetic diversity falls. Finding partners becomes harder. Every death matters more. Nobody has to plan an extinction. It can happen one empty valley at a time. Neanderthals weren't the only humans our ancestors encountered. In Asia, Homo sapiens met the Denisovans. We know surprisingly little about what Denisovans looked like. Their existence was identified largely through DNA recovered from a few fossil remains, yet their genetic signature appears in several modern populations, particularly in parts of Asia and Oceania. That means our ancestors also had children with Denisovans, and some Denisovan DNA may have helped modern people survive in extreme environments. One famous example involves genetic adaptations associated with life at high elevations among Tibetan populations. The Denisovans disappeared as a distinct population, but some of their biology survived inside us. Then there's Homo floresiensis, the tiny human relative discovered on the island of Flores in Indonesia. This species stood only a little over 3 feet tall. It survived in isolation for an enormous length of time. Then modern humans reached the surrounding region. Not long afterward, the known fossil evidence for Homo floresiensis ends. Again, the timing raises questions, but we don't know exactly what happened. Island populations are incredibly vulnerable. Their numbers are limited, resources are limited. A new disease, a volcanic eruption, competition with newcomers, or several pressures arriving together could destroy a population quickly. Perhaps Homo sapiens attacked them. Perhaps we took the resources they depended on. Perhaps our arrival was only the final pressure on a species already close to collapse. The evidence doesn't allow a confident verdict, and that may be the most important point. We often want history to give us one clean explanation: a battle, a killer, a single moment when everything changed. Real extinction usually doesn't work like that. The other human species probably disappeared for different reasons in different places. Violence may have played a role, so may disease, climate change, small populations, better human technology, and competition for food. Interbreeding also absorbed a small part of these groups into expanding Homo sapiens populations. In a strange way, they were both replaced and preserved. As separate peoples, they vanished. As pieces of living human biology, some of them remain. So, did Homo sapiens kill the other humans? Sometimes our ancestors probably did, but there was likely no single prehistoric war that decided the future of humanity. What happened was slower, messier, and perhaps harder to accept. Our species expanded into new environments. We brought our tools, our families, our alliances, and our diseases. We survived difficult conditions. We claimed resources. We formed relationships with the people already living there, and in some places, we may have fought them. Generation after generation, our population grew. Theirs didn't. Eventually, the fires in their camps went out. Not all at once, not everywhere on the same day. One community disappeared, then another, until no independent Neanderthal, Denisovan, or Homo Floresiensis population remained. Homo sapiens became the last human species on Earth. We like to tell ourselves that we survived because we were smarter. Maybe that's partly true, but survival doesn't always mean innocence, and extinction doesn't always require hatred. Sometimes one population only needs a small advantage repeated over a very long time. The other humans are gone now, but they aren't complete strangers. Some of them were our competitors. Some may have been our enemies. Others were neighbors, partners, parents, and children. Their story didn't end entirely. Part of it became ours.